The invitation lay on the kitchen table like a quiet accusation, white and elegant against the clutter of unpaid bills, school notices, and a half-empty cereal box. A single dad going to a wedding alone already felt like a cruel joke, but what made his chest tighten was knowing exactly who would be there, who would look at him with pity, who would whisper, and who would remember the man he used to be before life cracked him open. As he stood there in the dim morning light, tie hanging loose around his neck, he had no idea that before the night ended, a single shout from the one person he never expected would change how he saw himself forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of showing up even when it hurts, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because real people live them every day. He had not planned on going. In truth, he almost didn't. The wedding belonged to a cousin he hadn't spoken to much since his wife passed away, since grief made him cancel plans and forget birthdays, since he became the man who left early, who declined invitations, who carried tiredness in his bones. But his son had found the envelope and asked why there were flowers drawn on it, and in that innocent curiosity, something inside him shifted. He wanted his child to grow up seeing a father who still stepped into the world, even when it felt unsafe, even when it reminded him of what he had lost. The drive to the venue was long and quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. He kept thinking about how he would walk in alone, how couples would fill the room with laughter and stories of shared memories, while he stood there carrying only the past. He thought about the last wedding he attended, holding his wife's hand, both of them laughing at the terrible music, both of them dreaming about growing old together. That version of him felt like a stranger now. The venue was beautiful in a way that almost hurt. Soft lights draped across tall windows, white flowers lined the aisle, and the hum of celebration floated through the air. He arrived early, hoping to blend into the background, hoping to leave before anyone noticed. His suit fit a little tighter than he remembered, his shoulders a little more slouched. Years of doing everything alone had etched quiet lines into his face, lines of worry, lines of responsibility. As guests arrived, he felt it immediately, that familiar sensation of being out of place. People greeted him politely, some warmly, others awkwardly. There were those who offered condolences even now, years later, as if his grief defined him more than his strength. He smiled, nodded, thanked them, and kept his emotions tucked away where they wouldn't spill out and embarrass him. And then there was his neighbor. She had moved in 2 years ago, into the small house next to his. At first, she was just another presence on the street, another car in the driveway, another light turning on at night. But over time, she became something more familiar. She waved when she saw him struggling with groceries. She brought over soup when his son had the flu. She never asked too many questions, never pushed, never treated him like a broken thing. Still, he never imagined she would be here, at this wedding, dressed elegantly, confidence radiating from her in a way that made the room feel warmer. He noticed her across the hall, laughing with a group of friends, her presence effortless. For a brief moment, he considered slipping out, pretending he hadn't seen her. He didn't know why her being there made him feel more exposed, more aware of his own loneliness. Maybe because she had seen him at his worst, in old sweatshirts, eyes heavy with exhaustion, hands shaking as he tried to do everything right for his child. The ceremony began, and he took a seat near the back, hands folded tightly in his lap. As vows were exchanged and promises spoken, his heart ached with a familiar mix of happiness and loss. He was genuinely glad for the couple, but the words echoed against his own memories, reminding him of promises once made and broken only by fate. At the reception, music filled the space, and the room came alive with movement. People danced, toasted, laughed. He stood near a table, pretending to be absorbed in the decorations, counting minutes, waiting for a polite moment to leave. That was when it happened. From across the room, above the music and chatter, his neighbor suddenly raised her voice. She didn't shout his name, but she shouted something unmistakable, something bold, something that made heads turn. She shouted for everyone to look at her, and in doing so, she drew the attention of the entire room, including his. For a split second, embarrassment flooded him. He felt exposed, spotlighted, like a child caught doing something wrong. But then he saw her face. She wasn't laughing at him or pointing him out. She was standing tall, eyes bright, and she was walking toward him with purpose. The room seemed to quiet, not because the music stopped, but because something real was unfolding, something unexpected. She reached him, and in front of everyone, she spoke loudly and clearly, not in dialogue, but in presence, in tone, in meaning. She talked about strength. She talked about quiet heroes. She talked about people who show up every day for their children, who carry pain without letting it harden them, who deserve to be seen and celebrated. The words washed over him like a wave. He felt his throat tighten, his vision blur. He realized, standing there under the glow of warm lights, that no one had spoken about him that way in a long time. Maybe ever. He had spent so long thinking of himself as incomplete, as lacking, as the man who came alone, that he forgot how much weight he carried, how much love he gave, how much resilience it took just to stand there that night. People listened. Some nodded. Some wiped their eyes. And then something even more surprising happened. Applause. Not the polite kind, but real, heartfelt applause that filled the room and wrapped around him like a blanket. He stood frozen, overwhelmed, unsure what to do with this sudden recognition. From that moment on, the night changed. Strangers approached him not with pity, but with respect. They spoke about their own struggles, their own losses, their own fears of not being enough. He realized how many people were quietly fighting battles, just like him. The neighbor stayed close, not crowding him, just present, grounding, reminding him through her calm presence that he wasn't alone, even if he had arrived that way. As the evening wore on, he found himself smiling more easily. He laughed, genuinely, for the first time in what felt like ages. He danced, awkwardly, briefly, without caring how it looked. He felt lighter, as if something heavy he'd been carrying had finally been set down, even if just for a night. Driving home later, the road felt different. The same streetlights passed by, the same quiet houses, but inside him, something had shifted. He thought about how often he minimized himself, how often he believed his life was small because it was quiet. He thought about his son sleeping at home, about the example he was setting without even realizing it. He thought about how one moment of courage, one unexpected act of kindness, could ripple outward and change everything. Over the following weeks, he noticed changes, subtle at first. He stood a little straighter. He spoke with more confidence. He allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined solely by survival, but by connection. His neighbor remained just that, a neighbor, but there was a new understanding between them, a shared moment that didn't need to be labeled or explained. At home, his son noticed too. He noticed his father laughing more, humming while making dinner, pausing less often to stare out the window lost in thought. One evening, as they sat together doing homework, his son looked up and smiled, and in that smile, he saw all the reasons he kept going, all the reasons showing up mattered. Life didn't magically become easy. Bills still needed paying. Mornings were still rushed. Loneliness still visited him sometimes, especially on quiet nights. But it no longer defined him. He had been seen, truly seen, and that changed how he saw himself. As you reflect on this story, take a moment right now to comment below and share what part resonated with you the most. Was it the courage to attend, the unexpected kindness, or the reminder that strength often goes unnoticed? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Near the end of the year, another invitation arrived. This time, he didn't hesitate. He smiled, set it on the table, and began to plan. Not because he expected another dramatic moment, but because he understood now that his presence mattered, that simply being there carried its own quiet power. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own unseen strength or someone you love who keeps going despite the odds, please like this video, share it with others, and stay connected with this channel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach the people who need them most, and sometimes, that makes all the difference.